We are ridiculous. We are disgustingly biased when it comes to this issue. Look at how many airtime Netanyahu and his folks have on air on a daily basis. Andrea Mitchell and others. I never seen one Palestinian being interviewed on these same issues.
Well, I'll push back on that a little. We've had Palestinian voices
maybe for 30 seconds, and then you have 25 minutes for Bibi Netanyahu and half an hour for Naftali Bennett and many others.
All right, that happened. That exchange took place yesterday on our air in this building. Rula Jebreal, who had that criticism of this network's coverage of the conflict in Gaza, later tweeted this, quote, "My forthcoming TV appearances have been canceled. Is there a link between my expose and the cancellation?" Let me take you behind the curtain of cable news business for a moment. If you appear on a cable news network, you trash that network and one of its hosts by name on any issue, Gaza, infrastructure spending, sports coverage, or funny internet cat videos, the folks of the network will not take kindly to it. Not some grand conspiracy at work, fairly predictable case of cause and effect. But I know Rula Jebreal. I like Rula Jebreal. We've had a lot of conversations on this topic and others. And I know the issue of how the fight in Gaza covered in the media is an important one. And I actually think we're doing a pretty good job. I wanted to invite Rula Jebreal to join me here tonight to hash it out. Rula, I'm glad you're here.
Thank you, Chris, for having
All right.
me.
So first, let me just say this. Andrea Mitchell specifically, I think she's an exemplary journalist, in my opinion. I think her work speaks for itself. I don't want to litigate her specifically. I do think the point you're making broadly about a imbalance in the representation of Palestinians and Israelis, or Arabs and Jews, around the conflict has largely been true broadly in the media, right? So I agree with you on that. That has been the case. I think our network this time around, and I think the media more generally, and now I'm talking about the New York Times and other places, have been doing a much better job in this conflict. I think the image that most Americans are seeing from this conflict, by and large, are images of the destruction in Gaza. I think that's been the defining feature of this. And in fact, there's all these people talking about how the Israelis are losing the media war for the first time.
Listen, if that's true, then you have to explain to me why the public opinion is 99% pro-Israeli. If that's true,
right,
why the scholars, the most respected American scholars, Juan Call, for example, who you invited yourself, refers to studies that explain that in 2011, actually 12, the last
time we had the Gaza conflict,
you had on one network, CNN, you had 45 Israeli officials versus 11.
Yes.
This time around, you have between June 30th and July 10th, you had 17 Israeli public officials and versus 1. Let me also finish.
Yeah.
What I was talking about yesterday, and my frustration comes from my love for journalism and media and my love for unbiased journalism. I think we are really creating a disservice to our public opinion in the American audience. Let me just explain why. Not only because we're giving more airtime to the Israelis, but actually we are not covering the content in which and the context in which the conflict is taking place. Most Americans think, okay, Israelis are minding their own business, and Palestinians wake up one day in Gaza and they decide, okay, let me fire missiles. Right. This is not what's happening. They don't know anything about the siege, the 1.8 million Palestinians living under siege in extreme poverty, with 90% that don't have access even to water, to the military occupation in the West Bank. They don't understand, and they don't even know what's going on.
Okay, so let me say two things. One, in terms of this imbalance of officials. I think that imbalance of officials is a product of a lot of things. One of them is, we just set out last week, I said, I want to talk to the Israeli officials, and I want to talk to Hamas officials. It turns out extremely difficult to get a Hamas official to come on your TV show.
Palestinians are not only Hamas. And
no,
this is
but in this case,
because
but in this case, those are the two entities that are fighting right now, right? I mean, those are the two groups that are fighting each other are the IDF and Hamas.
Let me continue that second piece of my thought.
Okay.
Us, by forming the public opinion in that direction, what we are suggesting to the audience that Hamas is the only existing entity. It's fighting with Israel, ignoring, of course, the moderates, and not understanding that by backing these kind of policies, listen, public opinion, of course, will be translated in eventual policies and supporting for certain policies from our politicians. We're strengthening Hamas and undermining more and more the moderates. We actually supporting the Israeli policies that are being destructive, and they will not guarantee securities, and undermining American interest in the world and in the region. This is simple facts.
Let me agree with you on one place of agreement. The way the crisis is covered, it If there is violence, we cover it. If there's no violence, we don't cover it. And I think that creates an imbalance that puts us in a situation in which the forces that are pursuing violence end up being the most empowered. Because if you sit quietly and you negotiate, like Mahmoud Abbas has been doing in the West Bank and the Palestinian Authority, no one covers it. That is a structural problem.
Can you please dispute that some networks, and I'm not talking, I think MSNBC has been doing a better job than others, but some networks, you have 25 minutes of Bibi Netanyahu, all Sunday shows, and all Monday shows, and others.
But that's true for so many other issues.
And on the Palestinian sides, but then when it's translated to failed policies, you have to question our responsibility in the media. You can't say that our responsibility in the media is to promote these kind of views and that are translated into backing Israel unconditionally.
But if you look,
and supporting it on all the level, policies that are failing.
Let me say one more thing. Let me say one more thing. I agree with the policies are failing.
We are insecure. We're less secure as Americans because of these failed policies.
But let me say this also. Airtime always strikes me as a bad metric, right? And let me just say this final point. There are interviews and there are interviews, right? I mean, you can talk to. I had Mark Regev on this program for 16 minutes, right? That's a very long interview, but there was a lot to talk to him about. And you know what? If I can get a Hamas representative come on for 16 minutes,
with all honesty, are telling me that the Palestinians are interviewed on the same way.
No, they are not. They are not. They are not. No, I don't think the numbers bear that out.
Conflict is represented
the same way. This conflict has changed.
And I'm not talking as a Palestinian. I'm talking of somebody that works in the media that feel the responsibility towards my audience and feel that, you know what, we have ethics. And I came to journalism after living under occupation, coming here believing in one thing, that America is about 2 or 3 things. One of them is freedom of speech. So when I come back from Europe after being there and look at the media here, I am stunned. And I am actually concerned that our interest in the world, our stand in the world is being undermined because of our responsibility.
Let me just say this. I think that this coverage of this conflict, and I think if you look at American opinion about how they feel about this conflict, has been different than the last 2. Rula Jebreal?
Yesterday, CNN said most Americans, 90%, love Israel and hate
Right, but this conflict, I think you will see it borne out in the public opinion. Thank you for coming on.
We will see that. Thank you.